If your toddler isn't talking yet and you found yourself constantly counting words in your head, wondering if today was better than yesterday or worse than last week, you're not alone. It becomes this quiet background obsession for so many parents. How many words did they say? Are they catching up? Are they falling behind? Is this just a phase or something more? But here's the question that usually doesn't get asked early enough, even though it often holds the most important answer. Does your child actually seem like they want to share their world with you? Or are they simply existing in it beside you, almost like two parallel lives that don't fully meet? Because speech, as important as it feels, is not actually the first step in communication. It's closer to the final step of a much deeper process that starts long before the first word ever appears. And when a child isn't talking, the real question isn't just about how many words they have. It's about whether the invisible structure that supports language was ever fully built in the first place. To understand what's really going on, it helps to think of communication like a ladder. Speech is not the base, it's the very top, and everything underneath it has to be stable for that top to hold. If even one of the lower parts is missing or unstable, words either don't appear or they appear in a way that feels unusual, disconnected, or delayed. The first layer of that ladder is attention. Before a child can speak to someone, they have to be able to mentally tune in to another human being. Not just hear them, not just notice movement or sound, but actually orient toward them as a social presence. That shift from sound in the environment to person I'm engaging with is the earliest foundation of communication. The second layer is shared experience. This is where things become more social than individual. It's not just that a child sees something, it's that they recognize you are also seeing it. It's the difference between experiencing the world alone and experiencing it together. That sense of we are looking at the same thing right now becomes a building block for language later. The third layer is imitation. Before children can form original sentences, they first learn by copying. They copy sounds, expressions, movements, even emotional tone. This is how the brain begins to understand the rhythm of communication. It's not just repetition for fun, it's practice for conversation. And finally, at the very top comes words. By the time speech appears, a lot has already happened underneath that most people never consciously notice. Babies respond to their names before they speak. They point before they speak. They look back at your face to check your reaction before they speak. All of that is already communication, just without words attached. So when speech is delayed, it's not always a problem with speech itself. Sometimes it's a sign that one of those earlier layers didn't fully form in the expected way. And that's why two children who both aren't talking yet can look completely different when you observe how they interact with the world around them. With that in mind, there are early signs that can quietly point toward deeper differences in how communication is developing. These aren't meant to label or diagnose anything on their own. They're simply patterns that can help you understand whether the foundation underneath speech is strong or whether something in that early structure is different. One of the earliest signs shows up around the time children are expected to begin responding socially to the world around them. By roughly 9 to 12 months, most babies begin to consistently respond when their name is called. Not every single time, because distractions happen, but there is usually a clear pattern of recognition. They turn their head, shift their attention, or show some kind of awareness that the sound is directed at them. The concern is not occasional inattention. That's normal. The concern is when a child frequently does not orient at all, even in calm environments with no competing distractions. Even when you feel like you should have their attention, it almost feels like your voice isn't landing socially. Many parents describe it as if the child is in their own world and the parent is not fully part of it in those moments. That feeling is important, and it's worth paying attention to. Another early indicator involves something called shared attention, often referred to as joint attention. This is one of the most important building blocks of language development, and yet it is often misunderstood. There's a difference between a child who requests and a child who shares. A child pointing at the fridge because they want juice is communicating need. That is functional communication, and it's a positive sign. But joint attention is different. It happens when a child points at something not because they want it, but because you want to notice it with them. Imagine a plane flying across the sky. A child looks up, sees it, and then looks back at you. Then maybe looks at the plane again and back at you again. That back and forth checking is not random. It's the child confirming that you are experiencing the same moment together. That shared awareness is one of the earliest social bridges that language is built on. When this is consistently missing around 12 months, it can be a meaningful pattern to observe. A third early sign is the use of gestures. By around 12 to 15 months, most toddlers begin using a small set of meaningful gestures to communicate, waving goodbye, nodding, reaching their arms up to be picked up, or holding something out to show someone. These actions are not just cute behaviors, they are functional communication tools. When pretend play is limited, and play tends to be repetitive or very literal, such as only lining objects up, spinning wheels, or focusing on repetitive patterns without symbolic variation, it can suggest that this symbolic layer is developing differently. As we move into the next stage, something more complex can happen. Some children begin to develop words, sometimes even advanced vocabulary, but the way those words are used may not match typical conversational patterns. One pattern that can appear is what looks like advanced speech on the surface, but functions differently socially. A child might be able to recite entire episodes of a show, count far beyond what is expected for their age, sing songs perfectly, or identify letters and numbers with ease. To many parents, this can feel reassuring. It often leads to the assumption that development is not delayed at all. But the key question is not what a child can repeat, it's how they use language in real interaction. Are they using words to connect with someone else, to ask for help, to share excitement, to engage in back and forth communication, or are they mostly repeating language they have heard elsewhere? Sometimes children learn language in large chunks rather than word by word. They might repeat phrases from television or familiar routines. This is often referred to as echolalia, and in some cases it can be part of a broader pattern of learning language in whole units, rather than building it step by step. In many children, this evolves naturally into more flexible speech. In others, it may persist longer, and language may remain less flexible in social contexts. This does not automatically indicate a problem on its own. The key factor is whether the language becomes flexible and interactive over time, or remains mostly scripted and repetitive without social adaptation. Another important sign that can appear is regression. This is when a child who previously had certain skills, such as words, gestures, or social behaviors, begins to lose them. A child who once waved may stop waving. A child who once pointed may stop pointing. A child who once used words may become quieter. This often occurs between 15 and 24 months. For many parents, it can be confusing because the change may be gradual. It can feel like you're not sure if you're imagining it or if something truly shifted. But regression is a meaningful pattern when it is clearly present and should not be ignored or dismissed. At this point, many parents find themselves conflicted because alongside these signs, there may also be abilities that seem impressive. A child might be highly focused on puzzles, memorize sequences quickly, recognize patterns early, or show strong memory skills. People around them may describe them as very smart, independent, or simply quiet. But intelligence and communication style are not the same thing. A child can be very capable in certain areas and still have difficulty with social communication. The important question is not how advanced their skills appear, but whether they're sharing those skills with others in a connected way. If several of the patterns described feel familiar, it's important not to fall into the trap of waiting too long. Time matters significantly in early development. Even a few months can make a meaningful difference in how easily skills build on each other. And importantly, seeking support does not require a confirmed diagnosis. In many places, early evaluation and intervention services can be accessed based on concern alone. Speech therapy and developmental assessments are designed to help children, whether the cause is language delay, developmental differences, or something else entirely.
The goal of early support is not to change who a child is. It is to strengthen the pathways that help them connect with others more easily. Because at the core of everything discussed here, the central question is not vocabulary, not intelligence, and not speed of learning. It is connection. If something in this feels familiar, that quiet sense that your child's communication deserves a closer look, that instinct is worth listening to. Acting early is not overreacting. It is giving development more time, more support, and more opportunity to grow in a healthy direction. And often, years later, parents don't look back wishing they had waited longer. They look back wishing they had started sooner.